My greatest calling in life has always been to be a mother. And my biggest fear was always that I might be unable to have kids somehow. Looking at these levels, basically you only have about a 1% chance of getting pregnant naturally. And you know, just hearing that was devastating in itself, and like I just wanted to cry. To my channel, Eat, Pray, Crunch. Today I am starting my series on our infertility story. Our infertility story is the very main reason that I decided to start this whole channel in the first place, because we have had quite the journey over the last 3 years or so, and we have learned so much. We went through some very difficult times, and spoiler alert, we actually ended up almost completely healing our infertility problem through diet. It's just been a miraculous journey, and I feel like the information that we have learned about this whole process and how diet relates to fertility and healing fertility problems, at least for the kind of problems that we were dealing with, I feel like that is such important information, and I feel like it could definitely help you guys too, if those of you who are struggling with infertility as well. First of all, let me say that if you are struggling with fertility problems right now, my heart goes out to you. This is something that is near and dear to my heart. I have wanted to be a mother since I was a small child. My favorite thing to play when I was a kid was house. When people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I always said, ultimately, I want to be a mother. You know, I have had various career goals in my life. I am a massage therapist by trade, but I feel like my greatest calling in life has always been to be a mother. So, and my biggest fear was always that I might be unable to have kids somehow. When you're younger and you're not even in a relationship yet or whatever, it's just kind of this like nebulous fear. It's not even a real fear. It's like you don't even know if this is something that's going to be a problem. It's just like, what if one day I can't have kids? I will be devastated. Anyway, just that is my foundation. That's where I've been coming from my whole life. With that knowledge in mind, let's start this series. I will probably do this in a several part series because there is so much information to cover. So this first part, I will just talk about the first part of our journey and when we started trying and how we found out about our fertility problem, what we decided to do about it, that kind of thing. So that's going to be part 1 for today. So let's get started. So let me first of all just say the disclaimer that I have put a lot of thought and prayer into sharing this information, and it is obviously, the nature of it is very personal information, and here I am putting it out on YouTube. But I really feel like this is something that God is calling me to do. After a lot of prayer, I've just had a really strong feeling that sharing this information can really help somebody, you know. So with that, I have a lot of peace in sharing this information. My husband Bill and I have talked a lot about it, and with his permission, you know, I'll be sharing his information as well. He's given me permission to give details as well. In that, because the nature of it is personal information, you know, I just ask that you be respectful in your comments and everything, and just use this information for good. If you know somebody who might find this information useful, please feel free to share it with them. But yeah, ultimately, I just really feel this calling to share this information, so that's why I'm doing it. So here we are. Let's start off at the beginning. Bill and I got married in 2010, and you know, like I said before, I have been antsy to have kids since I was a kid myself, but not really until I was in my early 20s. Then I started really getting the itch, you know. But once Bill and I decided to get married, then it was like, oh, now it's like the reality is almost here. It's like I'm almost at the point in my life where I can actually start trying to have kids. But we did decide that we did want to have some time being married first before having kids, you know, because that is such a big life transition, that we wanted to have that time together and just get some of the kinks worked out in the whole being married thing. So that was the plan, that we were going to wait. I don't even remember what the original plan was. Wait a year, wait 6 months. I don't even remember what we had agreed on. But deep down, I wanted to start trying right away. It was like a month or two before, I think it was a month before our wedding, I decided to get an IUD put in, and I had it in for a couple days before I started having this extreme abdominal pain. And it was so extreme that I was like, this is not normal, this is not right. So I went to the doctor that day to see the OB who put it in, and she took one look. She's like, oh, your body is kind of in labor. It's like pushing the IUD out. I was like, what? Yeah, so my body was like practically almost in mini labor, like pushing this device out. It was really weird and painful. And so basically the doctor removed it since it was like coming out on its own anyway, which is obviously not supposed to do. I mean, you're supposed to put it in, it's supposed to stay there for years. And so I was like, well, clearly my body is not okay with this, and we're gonna have to find another option. So I just decided to go on the pill. And so I went on for a month before our wedding, and then took it for a month after our wedding. And then at that point, I just I had the baby bug bit me so bad. It was like a month after we got married. I'm like, we're married now. Like, we can start trying to have a baby. Like, it's okay now, you know? And so I did a lot of praying about it, and I was talking to Bill, and he was where he's like, we agreed that we wanted to have some time first before trying to have a baby. And I was like, but I told him, I was like, I have been doing a lot of praying about this, and I have just got the itch. Like, I want a baby so bad, and I am ready now. I am ready to start trying it. And so with a bunch of coaxing, Bill finally agreed. So I went off the birth control, and I think I waited for a month or something to just try and get it out of my system or whatever, because I had only been on it for 2 months. Anyway, so yeah, so that fall after we got married, we started trying. And I was really gung-ho about it. I'm like, how can I learn the most effective way to get pregnant? You know, it's it seems like it should be pretty straightforward, but what they teach you in sex ed is not the full story. I feel like they should teach kids more about the details of what time of the month you are actually the most fertile, and the cycle, the actual cycles that your ovaries go through, and just the whole process. It's a lot more complex than what they teach you in school. You know, they just make it sound like in school it's if you have sex you will get pregnant right away. And sorry, it's not. I mean, it is that simple for some people, but for most people it's not quite that simple. Anyway, I decided to read the book. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler, I believe her name is. And it's just the fertility Bible. It has everything you ever wanted to know about your fertility and how to most effectively time things to get pregnant. So if you guys are familiar with her, she's all about charting and keeping track of your cervical mucus and your basal body temperature in the morning. TMI alert. the days leading up to ovulation, your cervical mucus becomes like the consistency of egg white. It's like, that's like your body's way of saying, I'm about to ovulate, it's time. And then after you ovulate, if you've been taking your temperature all along, the day that you ovulate, there's a spike in your temperature. It goes up by a couple decimals of a degree. And when you're actually charting this, like on a chart, you can see that jump. So you know that you've ovulated. So all of that, I decided to start charting that month, and basically month after month, we timed things perfectly. And every month I would get my period and I would get all depressed about it, and like 3 or 4 months went by and I was like, oh, this is taking forever, like 3 or 4 months has gone by, like, and I'm not pregnant. And like, it's in retrospect, like looking back at that now, I'm like, that ain't nothing. So month after month went by. There were a few times I was like, oh, maybe I'm pregnant, and I like bought some pregnancy tests and saw a negative pregnancy test after negative pregnancy test, and I was like one of those crazy people who would like squint and look at the pregnancy test, like hold it up, like hold it in sunlight, and like hold it in all these different kinds of light, like, is that a line that I see? Is that another little line? Like, and then I started reading like, oh, that's probably just an evaporation line. If you read it after a certain amount of time, like there's an evaporation line, which is like, it's just kind of like a little shadow of a line that shows up after the test has been sitting too long. So yeah, there was a lot of like crazy person stuff going on where I would just like squint and like, oh, maybe that's a positive, and no, then my period would come the next day. So month after month of disappointment, and since I was like so gung-ho about getting pregnant and like wanting it so badly, after we tried for 6 months, I was like, okay, why don't we at least have Bill tested just to rule that out? So we did. We found the main fertility clinic that was in the area and made an appointment and filled out the loads and loads and loads of paperwork that you have to do beforehand, and just decided to just have Bill tested first and foremost, just to rule that out, because it's like, that is the easiest thing to rule out infertility problems. Male factor, it's an easy test, it's a cheap test. So we did. So Bill was tested, and I remember I was working at the time, I'm a massage therapist, and I was working in a clinic, and after my shift was done, I remember sitting there, like I was the only one at the clinic, and like listening to this. I think it was like a voicemail that I had gotten actually, and I chose to wait to listen to it until everybody had gone. So I was like writing down the results. So basically Bill's sperm count was 0.6 million. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with what normal sperm count ranges are, that is insanely low. The very minimum level for normal is like 15 to 20 million, and Bill was 0.6. I mean, and normal is like 50 to 70 million, even up to like 100 million. So 0.6, that was like really bad. The other numbers were the motility was 40%, and the minimum for that is supposed to be, that's like the percentage of the sperm that that move, basically, and it was 40%, and the minimum is 50%. The rapid linear result is basically the percentage of the moving sperm that are moving in a straightforward line. And the minimum for that is 15%, and he had zero of them were moving forward. And the morphology, which is like the shape of the sperm, like if they're like normally formed, and they have to be like a normal shape in order to function properly. And the morphology level was 1%, which is like 1% of all the sperm were a normal shape. And the minimum for that is 4%. So like the morphology actually doesn't have to be that high, it only has to be 4%, but still it was only 1%. I remember I got these results, and I went and when I saw Bill, we went over them, and like I was devastated by this news. Like I said, like my entire life, my entire dream of my meaning in this life was to become a mother. And I just felt like, oh no, like my worst fear is coming true. And I remember just having this sinking feeling like, I don't know, will we be able to become parents with this severe of a problem? Bill, was also pretty darn disappointed about it. But he's also, he's an engineer by trade, so he's very analytical, and he's very mature about this kind of thing too. And I'm just so proud of him for the reaction that he had, because I know like some men, like they really freak out about that. It's like they view their fertility health as like a sign of their masculinity and just like a part of their identity, and I am just so thankful that Bill was so mature about it, and he wasn't taking it that way. Like he wasn't feeling like he was like taking away from his masculinity or anything. But he was disappointed about it because we both really wanted to have kids, and like after trying for that long, Bill came around, he's like, okay, we've been married for a while, like we've had our time together, and he was starting to get gung-ho about it like I was. He was ready to. So it was definitely devastating news. So basically, I talked to the fertility clinic the next day after getting the result, and they said, with this result, you're going to want to come in and see one of our doctors and have a consultation. So we're like, okay. So we made an appointment to see one of the doctors there, and we went in armed with a bunch of questions about it. And from the get-go, I really didn't like this doctor that much. She was very cut and dry, didn't show very much emotion or acknowledge the fact that a couple dealing with infertility is an extremely emotional issue. I just felt like she was just very cut and dry about it and not that sensitive, considering how serious of an issue it was. Just bad bedside manner. But basically she just cut and dry was saying, all right, looking at these levels, basically you only have about a 1% chance of getting pregnant naturally. And just hearing that was devastating in itself, and like I just wanted to cry right then and there. She's like, but it's not impossible, but with sperm quality this low, you're basically the only thing that is going to work for you is doing IVF, and not only IVF, but IVF with ICSI, which is intracytoplasmic sperm injection. It's a treatment for male factor infertility when sperm quality is that low. Under a microscope, they find like the healthiest looking sperm and basically just select those actual sperm. Like they try and find like the best one that they can find, and they actually suck it into like this itty bitty hair thin needle. They're doing this all with a microscope, obviously. And then they have an egg which they hold there with another needle, and it's incredible that they are able to do this. The technology is just phenomenal to me. But they hold the egg there, and they actually take this one good sperm that they found, and they actually inject this needle into the sperm and release the sperm in there and take the needle out. It like bypasses male fertility. It does the fertilization mechanically for you. But it was bad enough that she said that's probably the only thing that's going to work for you. So that was devastating. So then they ushered us into the financial office. And probably most of you have some concept that fertility treatments are not cheap. They basically told us that the cost of doing IVF with ICSI was about $10,000–$15,000. And now that's just for that procedure. That doesn't count all of the other procedures leading up to that you have to do, and all of the drugs that you have to take and that you have to pay for. Ultimately, when all is said and done, IVF with ICSI costs $25,000. Talk about injustice. I just, I remember hearing that dollar amount and just my jaw dropping, and like, just my immediate reaction was like, why is it that there are people who really should not be parents who just bam get pregnant, and people who in other other parts of the world there's like infanticide, people don't want babies and they get pregnant with the blink of an eye, and the people who really want to be parents, like people who would be good parents, could provide for their children, why is it that these people have to struggle so much? And if you're lucky enough to be in a country that has this kind of technology, why is it that like most people can get pregnant for free? And here we are facing this prospect of having to pay $25,000 just for the possibility of us being able to have a child. It was just, the injustice of it blew me away. And the other thing about it, at least in like a lot of European countries, with universal health care, they actually provide like 2 free cycles of IVF to anyone, free. Not in the US, that is not the case. Fertility treatment is considered a non-medical necessity, which is absolutely absurd. So it's just like outrageous to me that like, there are a lot of medical things that are questionable. I mean, a lot of things that are covered by medical insurance truly are necessary, but some things are questionable that they cover, like no questions asked. But yet when it comes to like a malfunction of the reproductive system, they don't consider taking care of that to be a medical necessity, because they don't view having a child as a medical necessity. Like, you don't have to have a child like to survive. At least physically, but that's all they think about, and it's all about dollars and cents and the bottom line for insurance companies. But really, having children, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, is one of the most meaningful parts of their life. And it's a decision that anybody should have the freedom to make, to have a child or not have a child. And just the fact that most people can get pregnant for free, and some people who want it really badly have to pay this much money just for it to happen. It's just, the injustice blows my mind, and especially with how our medical establishment deals with it. Yeah, don't get me started on all that. So after our appointment, Bill and I went home and we discussed, we're like, this is really heavy information. Where are we going to pull out $25,000? Like, we are pretty judicious with our money. We had a good cushion savings account. But even with that, like, we would have to basically draw our savings all the way down and still save for a while in addition to that before we would be able to afford it, since insurance in the United States doesn't cover it. So we're like, maybe we should think about some alternatives here, because one thing Western medicine is not good at is looking at the whole person and the full picture. And not once in our initial consultation was there any mention of trying to improve the problem. Anything that we could be doing to, make the sperm quality better. And so we thought, well, let's do a little research and let's see what we can do.